I think now we want to keep things moving, and we would like to move on to our next panel discussion, and this is going to be founded and funded in Florida. I want to introduce our panel, Marc Billings, our veteran technology entrepreneur with a history of success in innovating new companies. And I'd also like to introduce Lakey. Are we going with A or first name? Lakey, CEO and founder of Allusions. And Linda Olson, CEO of Tampa Bay Wave. And your moderator, Linda Egner, 83 Degrees Media, publisher and managing editor.
Diane.
Oh, I'm sorry. These things happen, don't they? Someone help me out. Diane Egner, 83 Degrees Media, publisher and managing editor. So please, with that, take it away, your panel.
Okay. Is this on? Everybody can hear me? Okay. I'll just hold on to it. So thank you for being here, and thank you for having all of us here. We're going to just dive right into the discussion. You all have had a chance to read background about all of us, so we'll just start with talking about what we do. So Marc, you're a veteran of the startup world in Miami. So tell us a little bit about that. What today is different in Miami from when you started? What were you able to accomplish, and what can Tampa learn from Miami's experience?
In 2009, interestingly enough, because today in Miami we've got a really bustling technology ecosystem. But just like an entrepreneur, I went and pitched the city and the county and said, it'd be really cool if we had a bunch of tech people hanging out here. And I showed them all sorts of graphs. I showed them a graph of how much an average tech salary in San Francisco represents, how much of that salary gets put back into the economy and things like arts and restaurants. And actually built an economic model to show the city that, look, if we actually spend money in this space, we'll actually have a return. And I got every door closed on me. It was remarkable. It was one of those things that was sort of a do-or-die mentality, which was, as an entrepreneur, they often say, if you ask a good entrepreneur or just any entrepreneur, hey, what's your backup plan? They sort of look at you with a quizzical look, because there is none, right? There is no backup plan when you're becoming an entrepreneur. You're just going to be successful. Our keynote speaker this morning really resonated with me. He had a 10-year plan. He didn't have a backup plan. He said, in 10 years, I'm going to build this company into a $100 million company. And having been from South Florida, it was troublesome for me in that my friends had all left and not come back because of jobs, and that was going to be something that we were very, very intent on building. And what I can give Tampa Bay is that perseverance. Because although my program was called Incubate Miami, it was very broad. I was trying to introduce the concept of incubation into the marketplace where nobody else understood it. And, it just took a lot. Incubate wasn't the best program. We got us started. We had some fun. Along the way, I met amazing people. And then what happened after 3 years was that we were expecting 50 to 75 people doing our demo days where we had our companies and our entrepreneurs coming out and talking about those businesses. And lo and behold, over 300 people showed up that day. And it was like this moment. And it was the inflection point that showed that everybody was looking around going, hey, maybe we can become a tech city. And I have since long retired from that industry. I give credit to my friends here who are in the industry still. It's a tough business helping entrepreneurs. We're a very stubborn bunch. It's hard to listen. But at the end of the day, it does work. It works in every city. It takes a community. You have to absolutely support your entrepreneurs. You have to treat this like a business. You have to, as a community, set goals. You have to reach out to community leaders and get investment. And you have to measure that. Because if it's something that you just hope will happen and just maybe that will be the case, it's probably much less likely. Similarly to an investor who's investing into a startup company. So probably number one is, just rally. You've already got an amazing community going on here.
Well, that's a good segue to Linda Olson, who has done some of the same things you did in Miami today in the Tampa Bay area. She is the head of Tampa Bay Wave for about 5 years now, right? And you're now on the way to moving into new headquarters. Can you tell us about that and sort of how that process went and what's next for Tampa Bay Wave?
Sure. Oh, it is working. Okay. We actually had our very first WAVE meeting in June of 2008. And at the time, we were just a bunch of tech entrepreneurs who just needed a peer group because there really wasn't any other kind of support organizations out there that were directly supporting tech entrepreneurs. We didn't mean to build anything, but like entrepreneurs, we talked a little bit every time we got together about the ecosystem gaps and the shortfalls, and before you know it, we're like, well, hey, we can fix some of these ourselves rather than wait for somebody else to do it, right? And that just kind of put us down a whole rabbit's hole that we're still going down. It's been quite a journey. In 2012, we kind of got ourselves a little bit organized and saw a federal grant opportunity out there to let us launch our first center. And my first reaction was, we are a zero budget, all volunteer organization. What the heck do we think we're doing about applying for a $1 million federal grant? We hadn't even applied for a $100 Best Buy grant, let alone anything like that. But entrepreneurs, we decided to just go for it. And a couple months later, we found ourselves actually winning the darn thing alongside of our partners at USF, which allowed us to open up the first Wave Venture Center in downtown Tampa. With that grant, though, our partners were at Rivergate Tower. Many of you guys might be familiar with the building they call the Beer Can Building in downtown Tampa. It was wonderful space. We had a fantastic landlord that allowed us to be there as part of the grant. But that 2-year grant expired at the end of last year. And we were well on our path to sustainability. And we're looking at possibly staying there when another local business person approached us earlier this year and said, I know you're not sure what you're going to do, whether you're going to stay or do something else now that the grant ended, but I'd love you to take a look at what I've got because I think it would be the perfect home for you. So much like everything else that has kind of happened with the Tampa Bay Wave story, it's just been very serendipitous in many different ways, but we've got a local landlord that wants good things for Tampa Bay. He's very passionate about the ecosystem. He believes in entrepreneurs and what a tech ecosystem can mean for everybody in this community. He's very community-minded. We took one look at the place and went, oh yeah, this is our forever home. It's fabulous. It had almost all the build out there for us. We've got a bunch of different companies, about 24 companies call the place home, which is great, office space as well as open co-working space. But then we also continue to work with our programs where we support about a little over 150 tech companies in total if you look at the Venture Center, the Accelerator program, and our Roundtable programs.
And where is it?
So we are still in downtown Tampa. It's a really neat building. It will celebrate its 100-year anniversary next year. The architect for this building is the same architect that did City Hall in downtown Tampa and the Italian Club and a couple other buildings in Ybor City. So it's a really, really cool club. It's on Kennedy Boulevard. I say it's smack in between City Hall and County Center, 2 of our important partners that are supporting us today. So.
And we have Lakey here with us to talk about a little bit about how she got her company off the ground by bootstrapping it yourself, right? And talk a little bit about what lessons you learned in doing that and kind of what you might do differently today that would get you to today quicker.
Okay, well, my name is Altricia Lakey Cook, and I am the owner and CEO of Allusions by Lakey Swimwear. It's fashion, so I believe that I'm like the only fashion brand that has spoke today. So it may resonate with some of you just because my journey within the past 2 years has, I've achieved a lot of different milestones, but my business actually was an idea for me to mask abdominal imperfections. And although the world is no stranger to the retro high-waist swimsuit, for me, it was a way to just feel confident and beautiful while at the beach. I was a young mother. I found out I was pregnant just 1 month before I graduated high school. I was already accepted into Florida State University. And at that moment, when I found out, I had to decide and choose that success would be my only option. I furthered my education by attending Florida State and raising my son alongside. I obtained my master's degree from Florida A&M. And I've always had a passion to help other people, not knowing that years later it would be helping women gain confidence and feel beautiful at the beach through a swimwear company. So in 2013, I worked with a tailor to produce my own high-waist swimsuit because I ordered a few that weren't high enough to mask my abdominal imperfections. Utilizing social media as a millennial, I immediately found a need in the market for my product. I had so many women from all over Florida just in my network inquiring about my swimsuit. And as I had been seeking an opportunity to come up with a business plan or idea to create revenue for myself, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the idea. And I didn't have a formal business plan. Again, it was an idea for me, but it's transformed into a business with the help of social media. So with that, I've learned a lot. Recently, I collaborated with Cosmopolitan magazine, and Nicki Minaj graced the cover of the July issue in my brand, which was major for me. And thank you. Thank you. And it really, my story of determination and perseverance, just from being a teen mother, beating the odds, only 2% of teen mothers have a successful life. I'm 28 years old, and as an entrepreneur, not only is this empowering for other women, but it's very empowering for my 9-year-old son, who will be 10 in December. So with that said, a lot of the things that I wasn't prepared for to start my own business, I kind of wish that I would have taken a trade, maybe learned how to sew, or just being a little bit more acclimated in the business sector of, formulating a business. I was versed because I studied social policy administration, so I understood how I had to create a business plan and all of that, but it was just overwhelming at first because I had something, but I had to execute it, and I had to formally do everything myself. I had money saved up, so I literally hit the ground running, and in about a matter of weeks after saying that I was going to start my own business, I did just that. So, I mean, just for me and my generation as a millennial, just having the ability to reach women all across the globe at the use of my fingertips is just remarkable, and those are the things that I've really heightened off of, and just creating networking relationships and exploring synergies with people that I knew could help and benefit my company. For example, I went to a conference in New York with Cosmo last November, and I fearlessly reached out to the fashion editor, and I met her and I told her who I was, and months later she contacted me wanting to get some pieces for a model. At the time, I didn't know it was Nicki Minaj. So as an entrepreneur, I would say, it has been my genuine personality and being fearless. I'm never one to meet a stranger. I always try to maximize and seize every opportunity. And not just, hi, my name is Altricia, can you buy my swimsuit, but just creating a relationship, especially as women, and just supporting other women and supporting other businesses, and just getting out there and creating those synergies.
And where do you go from here? What's next for your company?
Well, as Mr. Raul said, a goal versus a fantasy. So my deadline is by 2017 is to distribute in major retailers. Nordstrom's being where my heart is desire. I created an opportunity with the national swimsuit buyer, just adding her on LinkedIn, and she's now become my mentor. She no longer works for Nordstrom's, but she is willing to mentor me to help me get my brand in Nordstrom. So I took a trip to Colombia last year. I'm just still learning a lot, and just creating those synergies and exploring those things with different individuals that not only can help me, but I can help them too.
And are you still operating with only your own funding, or what have you done for funding to expand?
Well, literally all of the money that I have made has been within my company, especially with the accomplishment with Cosmo that my sales skyrocketed. It was very overwhelming for me at that time because I knew that it was going to be big, because when you're working with these major publications and you're sending samples, you're not really sure if they're going to use them. So when they used it, I mean, I was hopeful, but I wasn't sure. And she let me know, and by the time the editor let me know, it was all over the media. When I Googled it, it was on Entertainment Tonight. So it had already been out, like, within moments. So, I mean, just being able to generate the revenue from my own business, it has, you know, obviously raised the revenue for my company. And that's why I'm looking to outsource and do major retail distribution overseas. Although I would like to keep the integrity of my brand, Made in the USA, for now, I have to do what I have to do.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And Marc, you too have launched several startup companies, right? What are you working on now, and how have you been able to fund those?
You know, South Florida and Florida in general is definitely evolving. We're getting more sophisticated capital coming into the market, which is nice to see. Still not tremendous risk capital, a lot of growth capital, really making the move into the market, which is great. So at the early stages, I think today it's still very, very relationship driven, right? As an entrepreneur, sometimes it's difficult to keep your eye on too many different items, but fundraising is a necessary component of building a company. And you have to recognize as an entrepreneur that you can only build what you can fund. Not every time everybody can bootstrap it like you have. So in those cases, you know, you have to understand that cycle. Out of Incubate Miami, we launched 2 additional companies that were fortunate enough to raise $4 million each. One was an enterprise software as a service company called Itopia. The second one is a collaborative consumption, a peer-to-peer boat rental service called boatsetter.com. We were just in the news last week for a merger. And I am taking a stab right now at something that seems a little crazy still right now, but it's starting to become rational. I'm launching a digital art gallery with the purpose of building out what we're calling the 4th screen. And my mom hates this idea because she thinks we've got computers too much anyway. But what we see coming down the road is that the deluge of data that's happening in our lives, you know, you catch me every morning, the first thing I do, it's kind of an addiction, it's terrible. The first thing I do every morning is I reach over and I put my phone in my face, you know? I mean, how many other people, that's the first thing you do every morning, right? Yeah. It's terrible. You know, and the problem is that all the data is in that phone. So what I'm trying to do is actually take that data out of the phone, and we've got this beautiful screen that we're collaborating with Samsung on right now. And the screen is going to, you know, represent a data visualization for whatever you want, all sorts of different content. Could be the weather, could be traffic, could be, you know, your schedule, could be whatever you're looking for. And the first product that we're releasing on that is an art platform. So most of the time it's this beautiful digital art platform, but if you so choose, you can have sports and weather and those types of things.
Very good. And Linda, how would you describe the culture of the startup community, statewide as well as in Tampa Bay, and how does it differ from other places?
When we started WAVE in 2008, it was very hard to find a community. There was individuals, but it was like trying to find them underneath rocks and stones. Where are they? We know they're here. What's great about the Tampa Bay ecosystem today is just there's lots of pockets. I mean, our venture center, of course, is one pocket. UT has a fabulous center now to show off the talent they've got there. You've got the Innovation Center over in St. Petersburg, Tech Garage. You know, actually having places, which I think is a development in the community, makes it easier and more visible to find the talent, as well as the people who want to surround those entrepreneurs, right, the mentors and investors. So we're kind of coming into a place where everything's kind of gearing up. We still have some issues with early stage capital here, a couple other gaps to fill, but we're definitely much, you know, miles better than we were just a couple of years ago. Florida, you asked about Florida. You know, when you look at what's happening here in Tampa Bay, and you look at Orlando, and you look at Miami, and you look at Gainesville, I mean, we really, as a state, have just tremendous pockets of really good entrepreneurial activity and, you know, resources. The challenge with Florida versus other parts of the country is just how geographically dispersed we are, without, you know, high-speed transportation to easily connect us, right? So, you know, when you look at like the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center, it's in the heart of Tennessee. I mean, there's little pockets around, but everybody, it's kind of like a hub and spoke, right? Everything kind of still goes back to the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center in Tennessee, and it makes it really a strong central point there. In Florida, we don't have that one main hub of the activity. It's kind of dispersed. So it makes it a little bit more of a challenge, because there's no one single place that you can go in Florida and find it all.
Do you agree with that, Marc? Is it different in Miami, or?
You know, I think what we're learning in Miami is that there's no such thing as an individual. I think to Linda's point about all the different centers, at the early stage of an ecosystem, it feels very disjointed, and then over time you see consistency and consistency and consistency, and you know, you start to piece things together. Coming to events like this, I now met Linda, so now I can connect with Tampa, right?
Can you believe we haven't met before? That's crazy.
I know. So, you know, I think events like this are huge, right? And just getting on a, well, I did a car today, so I drove over here this time, but, you know, just moving around. There's some great organizations. I think the Institute for Commercialization is doing a fantastic job. The EDC out of Boca is doing a great job of connecting us. So hopefully, you know, you can feel it. You can feel it. I mean, all across the state, I think. Yeah.
You're in Orlando, right?
I'm actually in Lakeland, so
Oh,
I'm in the
Lakeland,
middle.
right, okay. Are you seeing anything different in that area?
Not really. I mean, Lakeland is very far behind in a lot of things, so that's why I frequent Tampa, Miami, Orlando, just to connect with those people that I can explore those synergies with. I attend a lot of Tampa Bay Business Journal events. In fact, I met Linda last month sometime at an event there. So, I mean, the entrepreneurial environment in Lakeland they do have programs for entrepreneurs, but I mean, because it's so small compared to Tampa, Orlando, Miami, I don't really have the luxury of having it right there where I live.
Okay. So each of you have taken sort of a different path financially to get where you are today. Linda, had a lot of grant funding behind you. You had a lot of, I think, private financing, and you pretty much did it on your own.
Right.
If there's a person, what kind of advice overall would you give the person in the audience who has the great idea and doesn't sort of know what do you do next? How do you get started?
Well, to me, I think, especially with my idea and how I got started, the best way or how do you get started is simply just to start. I mean, what Mr. Raul said, you know, just being perfect and thinking that everything has to be in place, that's not always the case. And a lot of people say, you know, what failures have you faced? Or to me now, it's mistake, or it's a learning experience to me. So a lot of people are intimidated and they're fearful, but to me, it's just a matter of being fearless and just having a plan to enact and, you know, get the job done. That's what I would say.
So I think probably the biggest challenge is when you're starting something new, you feel all this pressure. And you kind of feel silly, even as I just said a moment ago, because, you know, you don't know if you're going to be successful or not. So sometimes it's hard to get past that. And you meet that a lot in entrepreneurs. And so I try and coach past that when I talk with people, because when you become an entrepreneur, when you do something, the entrepreneurs are in this room today. I've met a number of amazing people. And, you know, it's passion, you know, and you have that can't say die approach. And in addition to that, you want to actually have fun, right? Like, it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be, like, you can actually create an amazing environment around you. And the best way to do that is to find other amazing people and surround yourself with them and be open and transparent and tell them what you want to do. Because it's amazing when you open yourself up to people and share with them what your dreams are. It's amazing how many people will back you. It's amazing, really. It's fantastic. So I really encourage people to let go of that predisposition of you have to be perfect, and just be yourself and just talk about what you're going to do. Continue to do it. Execute. Don't talk about it. And lo and behold, you just get people around you. You just can't help it almost. It just becomes, you become your own gravity over time.
Anything to add to that? No?
I was just having a conversation outside with somebody about how we went, kind of like I said, from 0 to 60, being a zero budget organization to one where we were now benefiting from this $1 million federal grant for a couple of years. And by the way, we got 2 more federal grants this year alone, which I don't really come from a nonprofit background. This wasn't really what I thought I was going to do when I was going to grow up. I think our approach was we had a big vision. We had a really big vision, which is not really unlike a lot of startups. I mean, we may not look like a typical startup, but we were a startup. We saw the grants as potentially one path to getting some sort of proof of concept so that we could get to the action point. We wanted to get out of planning and get to action. We put a lot of thought into doing it right, which is, I think, how we landed the grants in the first place. But we had to run with it, and we knew we didn't have all the answers. We couldn't wait until we had a perfect plan. We waited till we had a good enough plan to get some funding so we could get out there and do something. And I hope that in the long run we can find a way to get this to the point where it's completely self-sustaining without even relying on a lot of subsidies from the government to do it. But we have the great fortune of having a lot of people in this local community as well as in DC who care about supporting this and growing this here. So I guess that would be my point, is really is consistent with everybody else, is don't wait till you have the perfect plan. Just get to the action point and find a way to do it. Not
Get
traditional,
started.
but
Be bold.
yeah,
Right.
we were a little bit fearless ourselves in doing that. So.
And each of you have had different experiences being mentors to other people. Can you talk a little bit about that? Ty is particularly interested in growing its mentorship program. Can you tell us a little bit about some experience that you've had as a mentor or as a mentee, and advice you would give people how to connect?
Yeah, so it's a really amazing experience on everybody's side. We participated in the TechStars program at a Boulder, and they actually publish a set of rules and guidelines for mentors. One of the biggest challenges that mentorship has, especially in early stages, is that oftentimes mentors want to overcoach because they feel like they have to be super valuable right from the beginning. And it's a very deep understanding. That relationship is a very, very complicated relationship. And, over time, I think the best, it's just you have to learn about the entrepreneurs. As an entrepreneur, of course, I continue to plug away in the community and find people that I know that I can help in an obvious way. And there's nothing that feels better than doing that. I mean, building success for yourself is great, but there's nothing like working with others and other entrepreneurs. So, I haven't really talked to Ramesh about that too much about time, but I'm sure this community is supporting itself, and I would encourage it to. I mean, you can't build a business alone. It takes, you can't raise a child alone. It takes a community to raise a child, a village, right? It's the same thing. It takes a whole community to make a successful company, nobody individually.
Want to add anything to that, either of you?
Just to piggyback off of what Marc said, it's very true. I find that, I'm always giving to the community and mentoring young girls and women, just because within 2 years, as well as my life's journey, has really allowed me to, inspire other women. But also, for me, I think that Oprah said, in life you only get what you have the courage to ask for. So a lot of times, even connecting with the former national swimsuit buyer at Nordstrom's, it was just a matter of me asking her after we had communicated for a while, and she said, of course, I'm honored to be your mentor. Thank you for asking me. So a lot of times, entrepreneurs are afraid because you have this well-accomplished, successful person, and you may be a little timid to ask them for help or just to be a mentor, when it's just opening up and say, hey, would you mind being my mentor? And sometimes that word is a little overused, and people feel like it's so many things that you have to do to be a mentor, when it's really, like Marc said, relationship building. And one of the things that I find too is a lot of people are inspired, but it's a difference with being inspired or people actually draining you as an individual. You know, in my community, a lot of people, they do look up to me, and it's sometimes it's just a fine line with, do you want to build a relationship, or you just want me to connect you with the next person? So I guess it's just being able to distinguish what it's all about.
The only thing I would add is, you know, I challenge folks around me often to think about, who are you mentoring today? And if you can't answer that question, then maybe you should ask yourself, maybe you should, you know, consider mentoring. Because for those people that we know who do that mentoring work, it's so fulfilling, especially when you see a young entrepreneur actually put your advice in action. They don't always do. They often don't. And then they come crawling back to you at some point and say, yeah, you were right at some point. But seriously, if you can't answer that question today, please try to find it in your heart to help mentor somebody, whether it's somebody here at TiECon or somewhere else in this community.
Lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about, if each of you were sort of in charge of the universe and money weren't an issue, what would you personally do to enhance the local startup community?
That's a good one. Linda, you want to start that one? Unlimited budget, what would you do?
At least from a startup community standpoint, I mean, there's so many things to be done. There's just not enough people with enough time to do it. So, you know, the budget would go to, you know, enabling people who can be dedicated to solving different pieces of it. Early stage capital is a big piece of it. I actually think one of the things that this community misses out on sometimes is more people being involved in the early stage investing. It can be fun and rewarding to do so, and I think there's some people who haven't experienced that yet. I would also like to see us kind of what I call almost like democratize the entrepreneurship path for people in this community. There's like returning vets who want to be entrepreneurs, and I know there's some programs, but they're not necessarily all tied to entrepreneurship. There's just so many groups who should be experiencing entrepreneurship, and how do we get those people involved and get them up to speed? That would be something I would like to see happen.
You know, so interestingly, as I was listening to Linda, I realized that we actually have that in Miami. We actually have an unlimited checkbook right now in South Florida, and it's remarkable. And it's honestly, we have the Knight Foundation. Is everybody familiar with the Knight Foundation? So the Knight Foundation has committed themselves, and a gentleman named Matt Hagman has taken this over, and Matt is in charge of literally, I mean, he's everybody's best friend. I mean, he literally has an unlimited checkbook. And, you know, they're really executing the plan. I mean, they're doing an amazing job. I shoot him emails all the time with, like, next things. I'll tell you the funny things I told him last month. I said, hey, Matt, first of all, I think we should sponsor entrepreneurs from South Florida to go to trade shows in San Francisco, because only the exposure in being in Mecca, you know, tech Mecca, gives you that speed. It's like being in New York City. When you're in San Francisco and in the Valley, you realize that down here in South Florida, we're going slow. We're really slow here. And so it's really good to get that interchange of ideas and to run programs for that. And then totally on a selfish behavior, I told Matt that we should have a standard apartment building apartment, so not another building. I said he should rent us like a 4-bedroom apartment in the valley, so that for our travel costs, we would just be able to go back and forth much easier, and it would create like these launching pads for
An
us.
Airbnb.
Yeah, a little bit, you know, but dedicated to our community, which I thought would be kind of fun. So those are on my Christmas list.
Is that Florida or South Florida only?
All of Florida, I promise.
So all we need is a night foundation.
Yeah, just build a night foundation. That's all. You know. Yeah, call Matt. I'm sure he'll take your call. Good stuff.
Can we do that? Okay. All right, well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.